Hello, my name is Daniel Hodab, and I'm the facilitator of the Law of One Europe Telegram group. You can find us on the homepage of LL Research under the section Study Groups. So today is the 17th December 2024, and we will have a Q&A session with Gary, Trisha, and Austin, the beautiful people of LL Research, which I want to welcome. Hi, Gary, Trisha, Austin.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much. So, how are you doing over there? So the year is rounding up, and I think everybody is still quite busy with the end of year stuff.
Yeah, busy. And tomorrow Trish and I will be blessed with a couple of visitors, Vojta and Emily from Prague. Vojta is a member of the Czech translation team. They'll be staying with us a week. But yeah, very excited to see this super group of the Europe Telegram group and the Jonathan facilitated Seattle Law of One study group. And thank you, Daniel, for having us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I would like to start with the first question from my side. I would like you guys to review the year of 2022 and what was your personal highlights of it.
You're about to go, Austin?
No, go ahead.
Number one, obviously, were the two ties. Well, number one, obviously, was Prague and Berlin and Brussels. But yeah, I'll say that highlight, and I'll leave some other highlights for you guys. We had the chance to resume Law of One gatherings in Prague. We held our first one in 2019 in collaboration with the Czech translation team. But then the pandemic that disrupted our organization and your lives as well. So with the pandemic, mostly behind us, we resumed Law of One gatherings in Prague, and there were people from 12 to 16 different countries, including Daniel. It was amazing. And afterward, we had the opportunity to go to Berlin, where Daniel and the German translator, Johann Blumenthal, held a small joint session for us in the afternoon that was both English and German. But in short, it was so restorative to our spirits and to our hearts to be with spiritual seekers again. We were in something of a drought in LL Research, having been 3 years since we connected. So that's a highlight I would mention.
Austin, your personal view, please.
Yeah, lots happened this year. I think another big one is near the end of 2021, we actually launched the new LL Research website, library website. And so that is not a singular static thing. That website will be continued to be improved upon for years to come. And so work on that has continued this year, including what ended up being a much more massive project than we thought, but it also turned out much better than we had imagined. It's like the search engine for all of the content on our website is now easily searchable through the search engine, thanks to our amazing web developer, Daniel Shields. He joined the team as a volunteer a few years ago, and we since convinced him to join the team as a paid web developer because his spirit is so positive, and he's such a great web developer, and he's done some miracles for us on the website, and his work continues, and just small improvements on the website. And he's currently working on getting the translations on the website improved to where they can also be searched very similarly to the English version, which will be a world first, basically, for all of the languages to be searchable like that on the website itself. So big improvements to the website over this year. And there's been some other things. I'll let Trish take some other things too.
Yeah, we two that are coming to mind are that we expanded our team. It was for a while just Gary, Austin, and I, and Jim, and now we have Daniel, who Austin mentioned, as our web developer. and we have Joanna, who helps us with various things like the prison ministry and helping get translations coded for the website, and Tiffany, who is our event coordinator, who, if anyone went to our events this year, would have met Tiffany. And it's been really cohesive and beautiful in the regard of personal camaraderie and relationships. It's really amazing how well we all blend together. And the other one I want to mention is we just last month restarted public channelings.
Oh, what a dummy. I've got my.
And yeah, that's been exciting.
That's very great. Is there, what I wanted to ask you as my follow-up question, do you have any things what you can disclose already what happened in the next year? He's laughing.
Yeah, so some things on the horizon for next year are expanding events, maybe holding a new one in person. We will continue to hold the 3 that we hold, Louisville, Asheville, Prague. I'm thinking maybe a new in-person one, maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, an online event or 2, because there's people that want to connect around the world, and they will never have the opportunity to come to an event in person. So those, and Austin mentioned the translation project. We've been working hard, particularly Daniel Shields, to create foreign language versions of the website. Presently, if you click on that little icon in the upper right corner with the Japanese character merging into an A, you'll get a list of like 21 languages that the website has material available in. The new way of doing that will be when a foreign language is clicked, the foreign reader will get a foreign language version of the website. Instead of just a welcome page for that language, there'll be a research homepage, a library, a channeling section with navigational pieces translated. So that's huge for us. And continuing to deepen and develop our channeling practice. That's for sure. Austin and Trish, can you, we always have lots of things in the irons in the stove. Fire in the oven. Something that combusts and cooks.
Irons in the hot place.
Irons in the warm place. Austin or Trish, do you guys have anything floating around in your brains?
That's very great. Thank you for the update. So if everyone have a question, so we can start now. I think there's a first come. Okay, Bill want to say something? Bill Blackham? So unmute your phone and then you can talk.
Oh, no, I just posted it in the chat. I'm good.
Okay, great. So if anybody have a question, so we can either you raise your hand on the button or you put it in the chat. People are used to be shy in the beginning, but the end is different.
I'll go first. Hello, my name's Leland. Thank y'all for all you're doing.
Hi.
I have a question. Hi. So I have a question on that extreme positive polarization that Ra talks about when he uses it in one example with Jesus of Nazareth, when Don had asked him about Jesus of Nazareth, who he was and what density, and he said he was positive sent from the Confederation, but he said that he was extremely polarized in positivity, and so that, what does that mean exactly to you all?
Daniel, what's your list?
Did you get any from the questions?
Yeah, I think we heard it. So what's your system for the 3 of us, any of us, all of us responding? What's your preference?
Well, I mean, the first time I saw your beautiful wife was on this one of these interviews. So I mean, I feel in the collective consciousness. It's whatever pulls at y'all's hearts. To be honest with you, I love you and Austin and your podcast, and yeah, y'all are beautiful human beings. So I don't really care.
That was so sweet. You all are far more scholarly, I would say, than I.
Austin, what do you feel?
So the question, as I understood it, was when Ra uses this term extremely positively polarized, what exactly does that mean? And I think Ra never gives like a specific definition of what that could mean, but my interpretation is, in third density, in order for us to get to the fourth density, we have to, according to Ra, polarize 51% service to others in order to then begin our journey in the next density. And supposedly our mission at that point is to continue refining that choice that we made in third density, basically. And that choice of service to others or service to self, it's a lot slower to refine that choice in the higher densities because the veil supposedly creates a condition where polarizing happens a lot quicker. But as those entities in the higher densities continue their polarization, I imagine it just means that they continue refining that choice, continue refining their choice of service to others. And in the case of Jesus, I believe Ross said that he was near the end of fourth density. So Jesus had been in fourth density for hundreds of thousands of years, probably living many, many lives, really refining that choice and coming to understand what it means to him to be service to others. And so I just imagine that extremely positively polarized means that they've been working with the choice of service to others for a very long time and have reached a point of extreme open heart, very crystallized love, a very deep understanding of what it means to be loving, as we can see in Jesus's words.
Lynn, answered your questions? I think she can't hear us. I know from Lynn that she's good.
Leela, yes. Yeah, that answered the question. So you still don't see it. So if it's imbalanced, don't we have to be balanced in order to go to or to transform into that positive law of one, or the balanced law of one? So I do understand the answer. I guess maybe it's from, like, I don't know if y'all have watched any of the sacred geometry, and even what Ross says about like the left and right. So if it's extremely polarized on the right or extreme on the positive, or extremely polarized on the left, wouldn't it still need to be in the middle? And was that definitely moving into positive fourth density? Or was it was there confusion because of the martyrdom, like what happened with Aleister Crowley? I don't know if I said his name right. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't want to be, I hope that's not coming off bad, but I was just trying to understand that portion of it. Sorry.
No, I think I understand. I'll pass it over to you, Gary. I think I understand the question, sort of a topic that gets asked a lot, and it's this difference between balance and Ra using the term polarized to describe how we have to progress within the cosmos. And so that confuses a lot of people, and there are a few different ways to look at it. I wonder if Gary or Trish have any thoughts on it.
Oh, for sure. But if you're on a roll, please keep your momentum.
Yeah, I can give my opinion. So Ra talks about how in sixth density, that is when we release all polarity, and the two polarities have to take in each other. And so essentially the balance that you're talking about, Leela, I think comes at the point of sixth density, but in order to get to that point, we have to polarize upon these two, poles of service to others or service to self. The thing that helps it make sense to me is that Ross says when we get to sixth density, for the positive polarity to take in the negative polarity, it's a very natural thing, because the positive polarity is basically the polarity of balance. We've been striving for balance. We've been attempting to work in harmony with the universe and understand the balance of the creator itself. And so when we get to sixth density, it is a much easier thing for the positive polarity to understand that this is a natural progression to then take in the other polarity. The negative polarity has been working on what Rob calls an omission of like the heart chakra, basically, and they work with, essentially, in my understanding, they work with imbalance in order to like brute force and use their willpower to progress along the path. And when they get to sixth density, it's a very unnatural thing for them to want to take in and accept the other polarity. So it's a much more difficult task for them. But essentially, that balance that you're talking about does come at a certain point, and it's something that as positive beings we're always attempting to strive for and understand. But in terms of the ethics of service to others and service to self, it's a very specific way that we look at the universe and treat other beings. Service to self will look at another being and want to use them in order to gain power over them, use them to increase their own power, and essentially control them. And they see the universe as something to be put in order according to their own will. Whereas the positive being will look upon the universe, they see others and they want to serve them. They see them as equal and equally deserving of the creator's light and the creator's love, and strive to accept the universe and serve others through that viewpoint. So that's how I reconcile this question of polarity and balance that I think that you are asking.
Beautiful, thank you. That makes, that helps a lot. Thank you. Makes things much clearer.
Thank you, Austin. Then we go to the next question of Jonathan Tong.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Daniel,
Hey.
thanks so much for hosting, and thank you for allowing us all to be part of this. It's a wonderful thing to be able to make connections this way. I have a little bit of a follow-up question to the previous question, and that's since we are in December and we're about a week away from the celebration known as Christmas, I just had a question in general for all three of you as far as what does Christmas mean to you, and in a nutshell, what's your relationship with the entity we know as Jesus, since we know that it was so central to Carla's spiritual path and to Jim's spiritual path? I was just wondering if you could share a little bit of your own, how you relate to Jesus and Christmas.
I would like to begin by first introducing our own Christmas cheer.
I actually
Yeah.
have Jesus on my sweater.
So
High-fiving
this,
I think that says it all right there, actually.
Yeah.
that pretty much captures how we see Jesus. He's high-fiving Santa. He's a happy guy. He's somebody you just want to hang out with. And I'm disappointed that nobody else is wearing Johan. Wearing their Christmas gear. I guess I'll take that first. He's the historical entity and or the spiritual emblem of unconditional love is not someone I've had, or something, someone, some entity I've had a personal or deep relationship with myself. However, when I have encountered that portal, I will call it, I can feel my heart expand. I can feel a connection to something powerful and profound. For instance, recently I just finished a historical fiction book called The Book of Longings. And it follows this woman named Anna in AD 30-ish, give or take. She weds Jesus. Jesus, however, is a secondary character in this narrative. The book is about Anna, but you get to see some of Jesus's ministry. The author doesn't so much emphasize the Son of God aspect, but just describes this very compassionate, beautiful human being who embodied that Messiah role and conveyed a message to a very hostile and divided and bellicose world to turn the other cheek. And the character in the book too had this daily ritual of prayerful communion with he who he considered his father, the creator. So whether through that book or I saw a movie years ago about Jesus that was, very conventional and traditional, standard Christian stock Jesus, white Jesus in particular. But even that movie, something about it gives me this glimmer into this entity, and I can feel it sometimes. And so I guess my short answer is, when I cross paths with that energy, including via Carla, or the many channelings about Jesus when Carla was serving as an instrument, when I cross paths with that, I can feel a dose of inspiration from that entity. And were I to cross paths with, were he alive today, I think I might be wanting to spend a lot of time learning from him.
That's beautiful. I personally was raised in a Catholic home, so I've always at least had some kind of relationship with I'll just say idea of Christ, because when you're, I think, raised in it, you don't, in some situations, you aren't able to fully foster an authentic relationship or know what it is you're trying to relate to. You're just told these, stories from a big book. And also having a bit of a strained relationship with religion anyway, I think did not help me discover what truly Jesus is to me. And admittedly, during many of my adult years, it was, I had a bit of resentment towards the idea of the individual known as Christ on a very shallow level, because he was associated with religion. And I saw how religion can sometimes be a vehicle for hurt. But it was through my own growth and my own realization and my own healing, and with a heavy dose of learning and humbling experiences of knowing Carla, even for just a brief period of time, that I have grown to be able to realize that he's that this individualist entity represents so much more than this dude I read about in a book. He's much more than this guy on a cross that I have to genuflect in front of and do the sign of the cross. He's to me, he's grown to become a pillar of selflessness, of service to others, of unconditional love and compassion. And I'm a little bit sad it took me, 30 years to get to that point, but I'm appreciative that I'm there now. And the holidays are always a perfect time to really exercise and notice that relationship that you have, because it's this opportunity to reconnect with family and friends and serve those less fortunate, especially because it's a holiday that seems to be rather very focused on materialism. So instead we can focus on, who are the have-nots? Who can we serve and care and tend to? So I think I'll leave it at that.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. Austin, did you have anything to share? Anything to add from your own experiences?
Yeah, thank you, Gary and Trish. I didn't really have any formed relationship with Jesus. I had a negative experience as a non-Christian being among Christians in the Bible Belt growing up in school. So for a long period of my life, I also had an aversion to Christianity, and that came with, an aversion to anything relating to Jesus. But, my first positive experience of Jesus, similar to Gary and Trish, came through Carla. Like Carla's testimony about Jesus and her experiences with Jesus were the first time I grasped a mystical aspect of Jesus Christ and his teachings. And then Jim also, soon after Carla passed, had his own personal experience with Jesus. And both of their experiences really resonate very strongly with me. I've never had a vision or image of Jesus as somebody who influences me, but through Jim and through Carla, I can feel the power that is contained within the idea of Christ. So they're my primary connection to Jesus. And sometimes when I especially think about Jim's own story, where he kind of had a very extreme moment of grace praying to Jesus, I will also pray to Jesus. And I've never had a moment like that, but thanks to Jim, I'm able to connect to some energy in that way. And then as for Christmas, it's clear to me that there's magic in the air this time of year. Some of that might be, like Trish was saying, some consumerism propaganda that has seeped into my American bones, but it feels undeniable to me that there's a potential this time of year every year, and it can be painful for some people, but also like the magic is so potent that if we tap into it, I feel like it can be a very powerful time of year, whether it's focused on Jesus or just focused on the love that he represented.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, thank you all for sharing. No further questions.
Okay. Thank you. Beautiful questions and amazing statements from your side. So the next question is coming from Carlos. Carlos, you may unmute your phone. Carlos?
Yeah, hi, sorry. Yes, I was typing another question right now. Give me 1 second. I forgot what I asked. I'm sorry, what was my question?
While you're thinking about it, Carlos, I want to say, Jonathan, when you began speaking, I just slipped into a different mode as I'm so used to hearing your voice as host. So thanks so much for being here. But got your question?
You're welcome. Thanks again to Daniel for hosting this and for allowing both our groups to be together. I think it's a really beautiful thing for groups to be able to support each other across the country and across the planet. And I believe Josh has a question related to that coming up in the chat window. And love your Jurassic Jesus. So thank you.
Okay, then we go to Josh.
Yeah,
Oh no, Carlos was still thinking of his
Carlos
question.
sorry, I was just typing another question. I was wanting to know what is required to be a channel, to be able to connect with the Confederation.
Awesome, Trish.
You looked a little moved.
As with any art or discipline or practice, there's a method of training. I mean, one can learn to be a carpenter or an IT technician or a mathematician or a painter, etc. Likewise with channeling. Carla felt that anybody could learn formal vocal channeling, which is what we do. But in a broader sense, we, by virtue of being human beings, complexes of mind and body and spirit, are always channeling, more or less, in terms of the conscious mind is a very, very small, limited aspect of our beings. Most of our being is behind the veil or in the subconscious, so to speak. So in order to receive and invite and request and to transmit information and inspiration and energy and expression from beyond the conscious mind, including our own subconscious resources, requires channeling of some sort. And artists, musicians are particularly visible examples of that. You know, they're tapping into either their own deeper subconscious resources or the collective mind itself, and bringing something forth in artistic expression for the collective to enjoy. But in terms of what is required, I have, if one were to pursue formal vocal channeling of Confederation sources, using the methods that Don and particularly and especially Carla innovated, I'll turn it over to Austin or Trish. Austin, Trish's head says.
I mean, that's a pretty difficult question. I do think there are some aptitudes, such as Carla had an immense ability to channel. She brought in something with her into this lifetime that allowed her to become an amazing channel. And so there are certain aptitudes that you could probably identify. I think an ability to let go. If you're the type of personality that has a lot of need to have control of their experience, and they monitor your thoughts a whole lot, and have difficulty just letting go and trusting whatever state you're in, whatever situation you're in, it could be a difficult thing, I think, to learn to channel. So if you have an easier time letting go, if you have already developed a spiritual practice, I think is really a key aspect, particularly meditation. Carla talks about how learning to channel in her book, her little pamphlet book called A Channeling Handbook. It's all about sort of the lifestyle and ethics of channeling. And she really drives home the point that to learn how to be a vocal channel, it requires a very high level of dedication. She does not recommend that it's something that anybody does out of curiosity or just trying to test out the waters to see if it seems fun. She describes it as a lifestyle and something that you dedicate your life to in all aspects. And so being prepared to do that, because it does bring certain challenges. You basically, as a channel, if you are not putting into use the information that you're receiving into your own spiritual practice, into your own daily life, the catalyst will come back around and smack you in the face. And things can get pretty difficult. So that's something that Carla really drove home in everything that she wrote about channeling. And so I think that's really the primary thing that I would say is a readiness and a willingness to dedicate yourself to the service of channeling in that sense.
Okay, thanks. I was wondering also, like, does it have to do with the energy centers? Like, do we have to have it unblocked, or does that matter also, or? That's part of my question.
I know that I'm a very human person, and on any given moment, I am not going to be completely clear top to bottom. But part of my tuning practice, me getting into the state wherein I'm protected and primed to channel, is seeking the healing and the energizing of each chakra. And I think for me personally, that intention, that focused love and light being sent to those chakras that are coming to mind in that moment as being blocked or not completely clear, is enough to even, it's required for me at least to get to the point of actually being able to channel, is what I'll say, I guess.
I'd like to springboard on what both Trish and Austin said. And I'm really glad you made that point, Trish, because each channel at LL Research, or really anybody who pursues the vocation, is an imperfect human being. Nobody's all 7 chakras completely open and shining and radiant, and without their own catalyst and hard life lessons and imbalance and sorrow and despair and suffering and so forth. However, to tie into what Austin was saying, I'm really glad you made this point, Austin, about how Carla was adamant on the point that this is a way of life. It is a path. So it's unlike those other professions that I was first describing in a way. I mean, in that one must walk the walk. You know, if information is coming through you about loving others, and meanwhile, you're an asshole to everybody else in your life, that's going to create some discrepancy between the light coming through you and how you are conducting yourself in your everyday life. So there, in terms of, Carlos, to reply to your question about, well, what are the chakras, what state do they need to be in? They don't need to be perfect, but I think there does need to be a minimum balance, and definitely a strong opening of the green ray. If one, it has, you know, there's very serious ways to distort the self and to be imbalanced. You know, if one has a serious, let's call it a mental disorder, something that would be clinically, you know, diagnosable, that makes it difficult for them to function or operate in the world, that they should not be pursuing channeling, because in channeling, you are standing in a brighter light, let's say, a stronger light, and that light has the potential to make visible your own shadow to you, your own blockages, not only make visible, but intensify and enlarge them, which is ultimately a service, because then you get to face yourself more squarely and come into love and forgiveness of yourself if you're doing the work. But if you're not diligent on a day-to-day basis and doing that work, then that magnified shadow within can lead to further imbalance. And so there's pitfalls with channeling. There's dangers to it. That's why it needs to be taken seriously. And like Austin was saying, one needs to walk the walk.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any follow-up question, Carlos, or you are fine?
Well, basically, you know, like Carla, she got those psychic attacks. I kind of like, when I go online, like on Facebook, and people like have like problems and stuff, and you know, a challenge comes to mind, and I'll be like, oh, look, this is what I read. Here, maybe this will help you. And it does end up helping them, but then I get these visits, you know. It's like they're trying to stop me from sharing the, you know, the law of one. So I was thinking, hey, maybe I should just dedicate myself more to it, you know, since I kind of like intuit sometimes like people's needs, you know, and everything goes back to, you know, the website, which is amazing, you guys, by the way, you know. So like someone has a problem with like this, or like my friend had a near-death experience and he couldn't like understand, you know, he saw God or whatever. So, you know, I'm like, oh, I read about that, you know, it's probably your higher self or blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I shared the link with him and he's like, wow, that really helped me. Thank you. You know, this and that. And then, you know, I kind of like, I know I'm going to get these visits, you know, and I went on the Facebook page, and I asked, what can I do? They told me, well, just, you know, accept them, you know, don't try to like fight them, you know, like they are, you know, your other selves basically. So you know, I've been practicing that, and I've been getting them less. And when they do come, I thank them, you know, for visiting me or whatnot, and welcome them, and they're becoming less intense. But you know, I feel like maybe I should like, you know, dedicate myself more into that, since I'm kind of like receiving that catalyst that because of my sharing and helping others with the law of one. So that's something that I've been like pondering about. So I just wanted to know if what it took, if I should, you know, maybe like purify myself more a little bit before I tried to, you know, do that. So that was basically what, you know, where I was coming from with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Carlos. So Josh have a question. Josh, might you unmute your phone, your microphone?
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here doing the Q&A L&L. And thank you, Daniel, for hosting. My question is, recently in my reading group, we were reading a session the other day that mentioned like a small social memory complex. And there's a quote from Quo giving an example of like a really tight couple or a close couple or a family being a small version of a social memory complex where they're basically can expect each other's thoughts and feelings. They're just that close and so on. And I think Rob may have mentioned that Jim, Don, and Carla were beginning of that as well. So my question is, do you think there are any groups that exist now on Earth that have formed their own local or small social memory complex? And then a follow-up.
In terms of a specific group, nothing's coming to my mind. I think it's a very interesting idea. I do think there will be a distinct difference in third density, even among a group who's able to flow very well in harmony without a lot of need for, outward communication, stuff like that, because the veil is still going to be present. And a big thing that Ra talks about with social memory complexes that stands out to me is the ability to harmonize disagreements seamlessly. And so in third density, the work of harmonizing disagreements is kind of the work that we're here to do, I think. And so I'm sure there are groups that can do that very seamlessly, but without the veil, I imagine it's kind of just like removing all friction from anything that could arise, and things just sort of flow without any effort. But in terms of specific groups, nothing comes to my mind.
Yeah, I would add.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Thomas.
I know. I just about Yada. Yada, it's so funny for me, but there I researched something. So it would be interesting. What do you think about Yada? Because it would be match this question, I think, with Orient and China. I don't know. I researched so much about Yada. But
you have a new question, Thomas?
No, on this question from him,
this question.
There are social memory complex. I would think it's Yada. I read somewhere in a transcript that they are from here.
Mm. I would add a caveat to that. Thomas is referring to an entity that was channeled through Ella research in the past, and other entities have identified themselves as basically social memory complexes in the third density. My understanding is that that's a unique situation, and that they're on the other side of the veil. They are essentially have become harvestable, and they are working in our time space to help us help planet Earth. And so they are a group of spirits who aren't necessarily incarnated on Earth at this time. And there are other groups that are channeled like that. I believe a really popular one's called Michael. Michael's supposedly a group of entities. And others like Yada. So I do think there's a difference between being incarnate and having a social memory complex dynamic like that, and having achieved harvestability and working within our inner planes to flow like that.
Okay, Gary, you'd like to add something on that?
Yeah, thank you for that. Awesome. That's Ra does indicate that there is a possibility that at the end stages of third density, a planetary mind can form the beginnings of a social memory complex. However, I agree completely with Austin that that doing whatever is constructed here in third density would still be fundamentally or qualitatively different than what is possible in fourth density. The physics of it are radically different. As Austin was describing, the veil is removed. So say if what would Don, Carla, and Jim look like had they been a true social memory complex as Ra describes it? None of them would have had an operating veil. Jim would have been able to look over at Don and understand exactly what he was thinking and literally see his thoughts, feel his emotions, understand his history and the totality of his being at any given moment. Moreover, all three of them would have had a repository, kind of like a shared hard drive between them with all of their stored memories and experiences. That's what the social memory component means of a social memory complex. And like Austin was describing also, there's the harmony aspect. Ra said in the fourth density, individual differences are pronounced, but here's the key word, automatically harmonized. Like there's no work really, as far as I understand it, to harmonize. It happens effortlessly. Ra even goes so far as to say disharmony is impossible. And Carla, Jim, and Don had exquisite harmony, so much so that they were able to channel this sixth density source. Without that, harmony was not a nice feature of their relationships. It was a foundational, fundamental requisite to be able to channel Ra. It gave them mutual support and strength and allowed them to be greater than the sum, greater than any individual one of them. In fact, Ra says they didn't even have the magical training necessary to channel Ra, but their harmony gave them that power and that strength and really that protection too from negative greeting. And that harmony was a function of pre-incarnational programming. I think they literally engineered their personalities so as to mesh well together, particularly along the lines of power, love, and wisdom. Also, their harmony was a function of past work together as well. But to loop back to your question, Josh, I think that it is what they were holding and embodying is a sort of training wheels prelude to what a social memory complex would look like, but still at the infinite phase.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Helps me clarify the picture in my head. I guess if more likely would be, you know, like they say, like twins or family that literally are born together. If you have one that's perfectly harmonious, probably is more likely than people who meet later on in life and have their own separate memories and so on. But very interesting stuff. Thank you. And the second part I have here, how do you imagine our Earth planetary social memory complex forming whenever it does eventually, hopefully? What events will happen leading to its formation? What would you?
About that a while ago.
Good.
So.
Well, if you want in, let me.
When your mic is.
So the question being, how do we see the Earth social memory complex forming? It's very difficult to imagine, especially at this stage in our progression, given how, at least to the perception, divisions and polarized opinions seem to be increasing. I do feel like social media and the internet have a big role to play in the formation of a social memory complex, because I believe the issues that we are dealing with through that technology, which has connected us, most of the world has connected us in an incredibly powerful way. We have to solve those issues. And once we can figure out how something like the internet and something like social media can exist in a positive sense, I think that will be the biggest step that we can take towards the formation of something like a social memory complex. But how that happens is beyond me. I know it involves love, and so that's what the guide star we can follow. Beyond that, I have no clue.
You know, following the war in Ukraine several months ago and the brutality of it, you know, which is not unique presently or historically on this planet, but it's just one iteration of a long-standing pattern of suffering in this world. And I had like this fantasy, so to speak, came over me, and it was as powerful and vivid and exciting as, say, you know, a fantasy of winning the lottery or a sexual fantasy. And that's that I like imagine what if just like the invading force, Russian in this case, but it can be applied to other circumstances as well, realize the harm and the error of the ways, laid down their weapons and sought reconciliation on a mass scale, you know, Russians and Ukrainians. And I kind of had this fuzzy image of them crying together and hugging and understanding, seeking to make amends for the harm that was caused, and healing their society, the land, and so forth. And you know, that can be applied in Iran right now, for instance, or Yemen, or even where there's not outward, you know, coordinated violence, but just cultural warfare, so to speak, and that which is prevalent in our own country. But when we somehow figure out, like Austin was alluding to, how to transcend our divisions, allow for differences of opinions, but find that common ground in the heart, how that happens is a miracle. But it takes, of course, each one of us embodying that we are all drops of water in our collective ocean, and for each drop that turns its light on to love, that ocean gets brighter. So on an individual basis, on a societal basis, I'm not sure, but societies follow individuals. So and spirituality seems to be a key to that too. Not necessarily the law of one, but just other people awakening to the path of spiritual seeking and their divine natures. And maybe, you know, you hear in the New Age community these thoughts about critical mass, and maybe that's it for this planet. Just it's something of a mathematical puzzle, so to speak. Enough souls awaken on the planet, and a critical mass is reached, and it starts a sort of domino effect. And that the power of love becomes the center of gravity. That becomes the vortex instead of the sinkhole of indifference, sucking people into apathy and bellicosity. Instead, there's this new pole that is love, like Austin said, a guiding star. So that's I don't think anybody has a clear roadmap of how it looks, but if I let my imagination roam, it looks something like that.
Thank you very much. I love your answers and appreciate the time. And when you were describing the imagery of Russian during the war, you Russians realizing and just laying down their arms and apologizing, reminded me right away of, if you're familiar, in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the point of view gun, where he shoots it and then they all just fall down because they see the other guy's point of view and just stop shooting. Like exactly that scene. But it's a great image, and hopefully it happens. But thank you. Thanks again.
Great questions, and empathy. Empathy has to be key to it. Yeah, seeing the other's point of view. It's a chronic illness with humanity in terms of our inability to do exactly that. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh, for your beautiful questions. Now we go to the next question from Kirill. Kirill, would you like to unmute your microphone?
Hi there. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for organizing. I have somewhat of a logistical question in the US that has to do with the prison ministry. I have a friend who is incarcerated, and actually I believe he was in contact with Austin a few years ago, and he's sort of lost that contact, and he's trying to reestablish contact with a little research because he's really hungering and thirsting for the information that he could get. It's kind of a lifeline. So I was wondering, what is the best way for him to get in touch with you? Because he unfortunately he can only, I think his only way of doing it is writing a physical letter. I don't think he has access to like regular email.
Yeah, typically for incarcerated people, there are some prison programs that allow access to certain types of very restricted email, but our prison ministry program that you're referring to runs primarily almost exclusively through handwritten letters like that. If he's been trying to write and hasn't been getting a response, I'm not sure what the issue could be. To give a snapshot of sort of the past few years when COVID happened and there were some intense lockdowns, prisons suffered pretty heavily. They shut down prison communication pretty heavily, and we stopped getting for a while almost any letters from prisons at all. And so that really kind of pulled the rug out from under the prison ministry program. But it has been getting started up again thanks to Joanna, our new team member. And if you, Kirill, would like to email us with your friend's address, his current emailing address, we can send him out a letter, make sure he has everything that he needs to write to us. And if you want to just tell him the address, it's P.O. Box 5195, Louisville, Kentucky 40255. Anybody can write to that PO box, and especially the prisoners. We have a whole prison ministry program with some amazing volunteers, and we'll correspond with anybody who wants to talk about spirituality or the law of one, and are happy to send free books to any incarcerated seekers who are looking for them. So send us his contact address in case for some reason his letters aren't making it to the PO box, but feel free to give him that address and if he wants to continue sending letters, but I'll make sure that a letter gets out to him.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I will do that. Appreciate it. And thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for answering that question. We are going to Ragnar now. You'd like to unmute your microphone and ask a question?
Yeah, I had a channeling question. Mine is more of a trivial curiosity. I have a lot of those. I'm actually really fascinated with the concept of conscious channeling, even more so than trance channeling, especially because of the dance that's been described that happens between the entity and the channel. And sorry, it just kind of popped into my head while you were talking earlier. So this is for all the channels, by the way. This is for all you beautiful people. And I don't have a specific example for it, but Kuo occasionally uses some very interesting verbiage, words that I know probably none of you would ever really use in regular discourse, like to where I got to hit the thesaurus. So in my head, I'm imagining, maybe Kuo is relishing the opportunity to play with spoken language. Or is it just that you guys were like reading Tolstoy earlier that day? Or does it ever feel like Kuo is having fun serving up a really obscure word to the channel, like, hey, I found this in the back room and I like it. So, let's just dust that off.
Oh, hi, Ragnar. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you again. That's a really good question. Yeah, I think in my personal opinion, Quo and some of the other Confederation sources do, I don't know if like is the word I want to use, maybe take advantage of the opportunity to exercise us in our practicing, and also like exercise us through our practice within the actual channeling itself. So yes, we are these, stained glass windows, right? Where we're getting the light, and the light is colored through our stained glass. So it has the impressions of, our personal experience, our personal language. But yeah, I have actually noticed this personally before when I go back and I read a transcript, and I think, I don't know if I would ever say that. Or if Gary, or if Austin, or if Jim. And I also wonder if there's maybe a bit of a remnant from maybe the years and experiences with Carla acting as instrument, because Carla's vocabulary was vast and broad, and perhaps that's what they would like to utilize, you know, this more intellectual, advanced language that they had with Carla. So working with us, it's giving us the opportunity to develop that kind of skill, that nuanced way of communicating that Carla was so apt and talented in doing. I have no idea if I answered that question. I'm so sorry.
That's
great. I loved it.
I've got thoughts, Austin.
Yeah, I just want to that I absolutely agree with Trish. Sometimes I feel like Kuo or whoever we're channeling, they'll find something buried deep in our unconscious mind and be like, oh, that's a cool word. Let's pluck that one out and throw it out. I have a distinct memory. I can't remember what words they are, but distinct feeling as I was channeling where a word will come out and I'll be like, do I even know what that means? Like, was that used correctly? I don't even understand where that came from. And I definitely, hear it happening with all the other channels. Like for some reason, Kuo through Jim has used the word cyclotronic a few times. I've never imagined Jim using the word cyclotronic in his day-to-day life. But it's come out. So I definitely think there's a play like that. To your point though, there is also an ability, if something's fresh in our minds as instruments, like if I've been reading something very intellectually stimulating that day or during that time period, it does have a higher likelihood of coming out in the channeling too, just because that's how and it stopped the there you go.
There you
go. Okay, so if you are watching this, the host got booted from Zoom for a minute, so the recording got interrupted. So to resume my track in reply to Ragnar, I think if we want to wonder about the question that Ragnar was asking, do the sources themselves like to play with our words and throw in some maybe that may be obscure or unusual or difficult to understand and so forth? I think Ra offers us the clearest window into assessing the source's intention, because the conscious channeling is such a blend of the instrument and the source that it can be difficult to tease apart who's the actor there, who has the agency in selecting the word. So in the case of the Ra contact, as everybody knows, Ra has some weird words in there. Even for English masters, they have such a collection of strange words, whether because they went out of fashion around the time of Shakespeare, or just no English user since Beowulf has used them, but they used enough that we have a compendium of them, a whole list of unusual words that we added definitions to. So that leads, so why did Ra do that? Like, we've asked ourselves that question, and it's a fascinating question because we don't have a clear answer. One reason may be because those offer an accuracy in nuance that more contemporary words may not offer, or maybe the contemporary alternative has more connotation, more baggage to it, or Ra, like these beings can express themselves on levels that we can't imagine, using light and consciousness and feeling and so forth, and their beingness. But when they're communicating to us, they're limited to these stale foreign word symbols that they haven't used in densities and millions of years. So maybe there is a sense that they want to play with that a bit, with the palette of colors we give them. They want to throw in some of those strange Crayola crayons whose names make little sense. because they're expressive. They're the creator, and the creator wants to express itself joyfully and playfully. And maybe a third reason is just that they simply don't realize, like I said, that the word went out of fashion, 400 or 500 years ago, because what's that time to them? Like, they've been performed an intensive study of English, preloaded up their vocabulary, and they're like not too familiar. But at the same time, any person communicating to a recipient wants to balance between expressing my message accurately and clearly and ensuring that it can be heard and received. So I'm sure the source has that tension, whether it's raw or conscious sources. Like, we could be completely erudite and intellectual and throw in a bunch of sloppy mess of high vocabulary, but is that going to be received? So
Word salad.
Word salad. Yeah, I love that word.
Thank you very much. Did you answer your question?
Yes, fantastic as always. I'm a happy customer. Thank you.
Thank you
Please
very
give
much.
us a positive Yelp review.
So we are slowly coming to the end. If anybody have a question, please raise your hand or write in the chat. Otherwise, I will ask the question in between. I would like to know your personal targets for 2023. Is there any personal things you want to achieve in the next year? Maybe we start with Trisha this time.
So right now I'm personally struggling rather with the idea of, like, do I make a joke and say flight is what I want to accomplish next year. Sprouting feathers and experiencing flight as a human. But on a serious level,
Dream big.
I know that's a little too big, I think. On a personal level, I would like to, as a perfectly imperfect human being, continue to heal past trauma and past conditioning. As I mentioned earlier, being raised Catholic can have a lot of pre-programming that sticks with you. So I'm struggling with guilt is often an experience of mine. So healing that, growing in confidence, and growing in experience and love, not just on a personal level, an interpersonal level. And situations like this where we get to connect are such beautiful moments of remembering and inspiring and motivating that kind of growth of love. And so I'm just so thankful to have had this experience. Yeah, I think that's my personal thing. Oh, and like, if LL could also like begin teaching classes where people can learn how to fly, I'd gladly be the head instructor. That's my professional goal.
Yeah, all about this flying.
I know.
Great, thank you, Trisha. Gary.
I'm glad Trisha said growth, because that is true of all of us on the call, and true as well for me. I mean, my own path began with that impulse to grow, to move into the unknown. And so I want to continue on that trajectory and deepen and intensify it next year. This year in 2022, I underwent a 10-day silent Buddhist meditation retreat. And it was profound and life-changing. And it opened up a realm to me that had been previously inaccessible from a conscious place, in this incarnation at least. I want to do another 10-day meditation retreat. And this concept of purification has long spoken to me. You know, Ra talks about the entity serving as a channel for the law of one. And I don't think that means in a formal vocal sense, but just through energetic radiation of beingness. And that necessarily involves a greater purification of mind and body and spirit. And my day-to-day life has a lot of room for improvement in that regard, I could say. And toward that purification, I've made important steps just recently. I think I'm done with the devil that has been shackling me and hounding me since I was a teenager, really. And that's my on-off battle with nicotine. So I think I've let it go. It's been over a month, and Trish and I have some red wine, and that monster doesn't come back up. I think I may have healed that. I mean, time will tell. I've got some tests to undergo yet, some social situations to be around. And removing caffeine from my daily life. I love that little euphoria and that high, but I feel it contributes to anxiety and difficulty sleeping and difficulty meditating. And I've kind of gone cold turkey on that too. Getting my circadian rhythms right and disciplining dietary input and the balance of work and rest. Learning to rest. This has been, I'm excited about rest, obviously. It has been, and no, I have not had caffeine today. Realizing how important rest is to me and scheduling rest, because I burn myself out. I burn so intensely and brightly. Each has their unique balance. That's important for me. Now, these may sound like some mechanical sorts of inputs, but they are, to my understanding, important in the overall program of disciplining the mind and the body and creating a foundation for spiritual seeking. So the more I can be less shackling my consciousness and wasting it on chemical disruptions, the more well-rested and exercised I can be and so forth, the more inner space I have for communion with the Creator. And I guess that's my big answer for 2023. I want to spend more literal just clock time and physical space spent tuning out the day-to-day patterns, and instead looking to the Creator within and spending time in that prayerful space that opens up that channel. I've felt it before. It's just usually kind of distant from me due to the folly of my daily life and the busyness of my daily life. It's interesting. I'm sorry, final quick point. Ra talks about how wanderers came in waves around the time of or before the Industrial Revolution, and with the thought of promulgating this philosophy of freedom of individual will, with one important byproduct being the freeing from the demands of life in order to have space to contemplate the Creator. And that's what I want. I think there's a lot of insight that can be mined from that passage. And that's what I want to create, is more of that space in my life, because I can polarize my consciousness. I can do good work. I can meet my responsibilities in my normal day-to-day habits. But I think it really takes some disciplined focus of attention to carve out that space from the daily life and to immerse oneself in those waters and to spend time tabernacling, as was one of Quo's favorite words through Carla, with the Creator. So you don't get short answers from us. I'm sorry.
Wow, thank you very much for that deep private insights. Austin.
Looking at the year ahead, my past year was marked by a pretty intense catalyst that just recently the clouds have been kind of clearing for me to, poke my head up and kind of see what's going on in the interior world. So I'm hoping this next year I will continue to be able to work with that catalyst and understand the gifts that it potentially has to offer, and heal from it. And I'm sensing that will include a reopening of some creative gateways that have been closed off. In past years, I've had a pretty intense goal to be a fiction writer and write fiction. And I've made some serious headway in writing some fiction, but set that all aside for a couple of years. So feeling like it might be opening up again this next year.
Great. Thank you very much for that words. Okay, we have one more question from Carlos. Do you have one more question? Carlos, you like to unmute your microphone?
Yes, sorry about that. I got fat fingers and couldn't click the button. Yes, I have been having these weird, like sporadic feelings of like I want to go home. But even when I go back to my mom's house where I grew up in, it doesn't feel like home. And beside that, like once in a while, I've been getting like these yearnings to like find my soul family. I was wondering if you guys like ever had that feeling, or you know what that was about, you know, because sometimes I read about people having like past life regressions and they find out they're, you know, what planet they're from or whatever. So I was wondering if that's what it is. I mean, because like, you know, I can't think of any place here, you know, that like feels like it would be home. Like any place I've lived. I mean, I lived in Green Bay. I lived in Seattle. You know, California, Mexico. But none of those places seem to like feel like that's where I belong or something. You know.
Trish,
So,
what do you think?
Well, first, my heart feels for you because that is that's an experience I have had more times than I can count throughout my life. And it's a confusing and sometimes uncomfortable feeling to desire so badly to want to go someplace that you don't know what it is and you're crying out for it and you don't know what, who you're crying out to. So I feel for you in that experience. And as uncomfortable and uncertain as that question is, I personally try to take comfort in the thought that that's perhaps a hallmark of why I came here, right? That this isn't home for me, but I chose to come here to be of service, to help others. I chose this discomfort. I chose this experience. And in terms of knowing outside of that, what that means, like in terms of trying to figure out soul family or, again, I think for me, it comes down to an incarnational choice of perhaps like being a wanderer, right? This environment will not be the most comfortable at times to be a wanderer here. And it's marked by loneliness. And that probably doesn't provide much comfort, and I'm sorry. But that's at least what speaks to my heart when I hear what you say. And in terms of my own experience with that feeling of not belonging and not knowing where home was, because oh man, that's a heartbreaking feeling to desire to want to go to your mom's house, to your parents' house, to your childhood home and want that to feel like home. And it just isn't. And you can't put your finger on why. So I feel for you, fellow self. I'm sorry that that's been an experience of yours. I'm right there with you. Perhaps we can go find our home.
yeah. Well, I know we're not really supposed to know, you know, basically, but I don't know, it sucks.
Yeah.
When Daniel, is there space for Austin and I to reply?
Yes, sure, of course.
When my own path of awakening began, I was 18 years old. And as a function of my awakening to my spiritual path and spiritual desires, it was in the context of the world that I grew up in. I was still living with my parents. I had big families on either side. I had quite a few friends in high school. And I became estranged from all that, not because anybody rejected me or pushed me out, but I could no longer identify with it. I drifted out, and to the ocean, and it was ridiculously painful. I was so alone. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anybody to share my inner self with, or what I was going through. And I went from being a very social person to hibernating, in my room and reading books and meditating and so forth. And that sense has never completely gone away. The closest I've come to home is with Trisha. And the companionship that this relationship provides, which is not tied to a physical location, but could take place anywhere. And my home with my family, with LL Research. But Rod describes, when talking about the profile of the wanderer, they describe a certain symptomology, and they named just one characteristic that is, they don't say universal, but they give the sense that it's predominant, it's widespread, and that's a sense of alienation. I think they use the word handicapping. The sense of alienation can even be, very handicapping. And it's not difficult to understand why. I mean, if you identify as a wanderer, and if what Ra and the Confederation says about wanderers is true, then you existed in a world where thousands or millions or however many of the souls were connected directly to your heart, and everybody was your friend. You loved everybody. Everybody loved you. There was no disharmony. There was no one to hurt. There was nothing that was threatening. You lived to serve and to be served, and you lived in an environment of love and light, and you had companionship. And then to come here, this is harsh by extreme measures, not just because it's third density and veiled and we're cut off from all of that, but also due to the way human beings treat one another, and due to the way particularly Western society is structured, that atomizes us, that makes us all individuals, that has eroded community. I think even if one is not a wanderer, loneliness is one of the great symptoms of our own illness in Western society. We've lost community, and we as individual souls need each other. We need bonds, we need community and companionship. And that ache, I can hear it in your voice, Carlos. That ache, I don't know that it ever goes away. I think it can be ameliorated. I think the closest we can come is through our friendships, through the connections of heart with other people. And ultimately, I'm not speaking from a place of experiential understanding, but ultimately, if we do awaken to the creator within, to the oneness of all things, if we can dissolve the illusion of separation, then I think loneliness goes with that too, because loneliness depends on a paradigm of I am separate from everybody else. And in this separation, I'm in a dark corner. I'm deficient with love and connection and joy. But if we can dissolve that illusion of separation and realize I'm one with all things, oneness is all that there is, then really home is wherever one's attention is, one's consciousness is. But Austin, did you have thoughts for Carlos? Thank you for the vulnerability there, Carlos, and the authenticity.
No, that was beautiful. I prefer not to jump on top of that.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much for the very personal insights. Carlos, you like to add something on that?
No, I'm just saying, maybe it's just the times, the season, because I don't know, it's just like the rest of my family, they get along. But I don't, I can't seem to connect with them, like my whole life, basically. So, yeah, I just did, maybe it's a season, Christmas and all this stuff going on, and I see them like together, like I don't know, I just can't, I can't seem to like connect with them. You know, like I mean, they're all Christian and stuff, and I've never had that like. I've never like resonated with the religion. You know, it's just been wrong to me, and so I've been pushed away. You know, I just so I've been having a hard time with that. Yeah. Like as much as I tried to connect with them, like call them and text them, I barely ever get a response. So that's why, you know, I feel like maybe you know, they're not my family. You know, maybe there's my soul family's out there, maybe. But yeah, you're right. You know, we're all connected, and I feel that, you know, most of the time, but sometimes it just hits me. You know, like especially when I read about other people and their like past life regressions, and they find out what, you know, where they came from and stuff like that. And, I mean, I kind of want to do that, but at the same time, maybe like I kind of don't. You know, maybe I shouldn't. So that's something I just gotta like work on. You know, you know, it just you know, I was forced to go to church, and I have that same guilt, you know, that you spoke about. You know, like gloom and doom stuff, and really guilty me, like put me to really like tiny little box, you know, for a while, and it took like a lot for me to break out of that little box. And once I did, it was like, what, are you crazy? Like, God, this, Jesus, this, you know. And I'm glad that I got the law of one. And curiously, you know, I got into trouble and I ended up in jail. And that's where the law of one came to me. So that prison program I spoke about, I think is very important, you know. Because even when I was in there, people were like, what did you do? I'm like, I did this. They're like, oh, you're not even supposed to be here. Why are you here? And I think I was in there to receive that law of one, you know? So, I mean, people are like, oh, wow, why are you here? I told them, you know what? I asked higher power for knowledge and understanding. And I guess this is why I'm here, you know, to receive this knowledge and understanding of the law of one. You know, that's, you know, because to me, it like filled in the gaps that religion, you know, didn't explain. So like I said, you know what, I'm grateful I'm here. I basically asked for this to be in jail so I can receive this knowledge, and, you know, and that kind of freed me, you know. But I came back out and I tried to talk to my family about it, and they looked at me like I was nuts. And like, oh, you're blaspheming. And like, well, no, like just listen to reason, you know, like, but that even pushed me further away from them. And, you know, they get together and stuff, and I'm not invited, you know. So I guess that's what hurts. But thank you guys for you know, hear me out. Appreciate it. Appreciate you guys and appreciate your work. Thank you.
Carlos, a lot of people are sending you love and light currently through the chat and through their hearts. Thank you very much for your very personal words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos.
So it's time now for some closing words. I think we cannot end up more emotional as we are now. So maybe Austin want to start.
Just keep it short. Thank you everybody so much for being here and for shining your lights, and thank you for everything, for coming to Earth in general. Carlos was just talking about we come here knowing that we're going to experience this pain, and that doesn't make it any easier when we're in the middle of it. And just, I think the best thing we can do is support each other, and like Jim always says, we will bring each other home. So thank you, Daniel, for hosting, and thank everybody for being here.
Thank you very much. Gary, you want to give your closing words, please?
Yeah, Daniel, thank you for this opportunity. It's energizing and heart-opening to be among you guys, to be with other spiritual seekers. And it's an opportunity we're grateful, not as knowledge givers or people who have figured it out or mastered the law of one, just people who have their own study to share that is to be placed alongside your study in equality. And to Carlos and to all wanderers, you are accepted here for who you are. And yeah, just, I guess, love you all. Daniel, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, I want to thank everybody to participate on that Zoom call, and we are coming now close to Christmas. I think it was a beautiful closure for Zoom calls, or at least from my end. I'm sure there will be some other things before end of the year. And yes, and I will want to wish everybody a good end of the year, a beautiful Christmas time, and sending from Berlin love and light to everybody over there. Thank you very much for participating here. And hopefully we will see very soon again in this very kind people everywhere. Thank you very much, everybody, and hope to see you soon for the next Zoom calls in the beginning of next year. Thank you very much. Love and light to everybody.
Yes.
Love and light to all.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about me, guys.
Bye, guys. Love you all.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too.